Alberta Primetime with Michael Higgins.
Welcome to Alberta Primetime. Ahead tonight, our politics panel on a bitter back and forth over noise restrictions ahead of the Calgary Stampede. But first, municipalities pushed to the limit.
I don't think we've ever had a situation where we've put water restrictions in place to help out the sanitary sewer system because of a stormwater issue. So this is a fairly unique one.
While wastewater systems have stabilized and restrictions lifted in Edmonton, a number of communities in the surrounding region continue to contend with the impact of significant rainfall and overland flooding, including a state of emergency in the town of Tofield. Joining us now to discuss this and more, Dylan Bressy, president of Alberta Municipalities and a Grand Prairie City Councillor. Councillor Bressy, good to see you, sir. Welcome back.
Thanks for having me, Michael.
All right, so what are your member municipalities reflecting about the challenges of the past few days? Why is it that their wastewater systems were pushed to the limits?
Well, this wasn't a unique challenge, but it really is a great illustration of the challenge that municipal councils are facing every single day. And that is, we're in a changing world where our municipalities are having to deliver services they haven't had in the past. For example, this was a once in a 100-year storm, supposedly, but those seem to be coming a lot more frequently these days. At the same time, municipalities are also dealing with increased population growth. And often when we talk about people moving to our province, we talk about infrastructure like wastewater treatment plants, recreation centers, police services, fire services, but also more people in a metro area means a lot more hard surface, which means a lot more catch basins, storm flows, storm ponds, et cetera, are needed. And so this really is just an illustration, a very visible one, of the challenges municipalities are facing every single day, keeping up with evolving and increasing service needs, even while our population is growing.
Obviously, there are small and medium-sized communities struggling with this, but what does it say when a city the size of Edmonton had to actually ask its residents to cut back on water use because of stormwater system being at capacity?
Well, we have 264 cities, towns, and villages in this province, and all of them have huge infrastructure needs. If you took all the pipeline that our cities, towns, and villages ran in this province for water, wastewater, and storm, and you stacked it end to end, you'd have a 54,000-kilometer line of pipe. That's enough to go around the globe once and still build a pipeline from Calgary to Istanbul. So collectively, municipalities in Alberta are taking care of a huge amount of infrastructure, which they're not just dealing with maintaining and replacing as it ages out, but also needing to expand that infrastructure services as we see new storm events, as we see new people move to this province, and as we see new economies push our infrastructure in new ways. And so this is a challenge that we're seeing in our largest cities to our smallest villages of just keeping up with basic infrastructure.
Okay, as you point out, there are elements here missing from the infrastructure equation to be able to deal with this. So what kind of conversation as a consequence do you see municipalities now needing to sit down and have, specifically in the wake of this?
Well, the big challenge that municipalities are facing is our primary source of revenue is only taxes. And property taxes were put in place over 100 years ago when literally all municipalities were doing was building roads and building fire breaks. Well, now municipalities also need to maintain storm systems, run recreation centers, deliver social programs, run fire halls, run police stations. And so there's this huge amount of municipal services that weren't even contemplated when municipalities were first created. And we don't think that property taxes alone are keeping up with today's challenges and today's opportunities. So we really are excited about some of the conversations we're having with our colleagues at the provincial and federal government, and even more so conversations we're having with Alberta residents about what should the future of funding municipal infrastructure and services look like. Is it truly just property taxes that should be keeping up with this growth and these challenges? Or are there other funding mechanisms that should be put in place to make sure that our residents, our businesses have the storm pipes, the roads, the rec centers, the fire stations that they need?
Okay, before we get to developing elements in that exact regard, maybe one more quick question. A lot of homeowners left bailing out their basements. Had notifications gone out sooner to cut back on non-essential water use, might that have made a bit more of a difference in the outcome?
I can't tell you what the story in individual municipalities was in terms of what was going on in their communication fields, but I can tell you that our municipal staff across this province, they really are on top of their game in terms of giving residents the earliest possible warning that they can give, even when there's imperfect data out there. So I do know that our communities work hard to get that message out as quickly as possible. But this is also why it's really important that residents are following their municipality on social media. They're subscribing to text message alerts where that's available. They're signing up for the email lists, and they're doing their part to plug into municipal communication infrastructure so that these messages can get out as quickly as possible when residents need to know something.
Yeah, communication, obviously a critical point here. Communication on another level, and it's to pick up on what you were mentioning a moment ago. The Smith government today launching a minister's council to discuss new ways of funding municipal infrastructure without raising taxes. I understand you'll play a role here. What do you see this potentially accomplishing?
That's right. So this is a council that Alberta municipalities, along with the Mid-Sized City Mayors Caucus and industry groups, are going to be participating in. And it really is looking at, right now, the two ways that municipal infrastructure is funded is through property taxes or offsite levies. Well, we're looking at, are there alternative ways that we should fund this infrastructure so that we can keep up with a growing population here in Alberta? And we're excited for that conversation because we really don't think that property taxes and municipal debt alone are the only solutions that should be on the table when it comes to building the new roads, the new pipes, the new recreation centers that our residents and our businesses need.
Are there actually options?
And that's the work we'll be doing over the next couple months. I know that I've heard a few ideas from both industry and various government colleagues about maybe there's some options to find lower cost borrowing for industry as it's building roads and pipes, or maybe there are some new tools that could be put in the municipal tool belt in order to manage debt in a way that's more equitable and more affordable for our members. So right now we are very much at the early stages of this, and it is a conversation we welcome. However, as we're having this conversation, it's really important to us that it's framed around, number one, getting new funding into the system. It can't just be about rejuggling who's paying for what would already get paid for anyways. This really needs to be about new capital injection to get new roads, new pipes, new infrastructure built. And it also does need to be about making sure that the people that are going to use these services in the future are the ones paying for them. We can't just have existing taxpayers pay them more money to build new neighborhoods as they develop. Okay,
maybe as one quick final question in this regard, what kind of door do you hope or see this opening, where dialogue with the provincial government is concerned? Because it was just a matter of months ago, we were talking about a degree of tension over taxation and even the viability of municipalities.
Well, and I think that this is a conversation that's great because it's not just us in the province, it also is industry, and those are important conversations. But at the end of the day, I also think that we can't just be looking at debt and borrowing instruments in order to fund infrastructure. The reality is municipalities are an order of government that owns about 65% of public infrastructure in Canada and collects under 10% of taxation revenue. So something in that equation needs to change, which means either new tax tools made available to municipalities or other orders of government kicking in larger and more predictable amounts of funding than they are right now, because you just can't keep up with 65% of the infrastructure on less than 10% of government revenue.
All right. We'll leave it there for time. Appreciate your time as always, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dylan Bressie is president of Alberta Municipalities, also a Grand Prairie City Councillor. From municipal water woes and financing infrastructure to the fuss over Stampede Festival noise and how Alberta factors into the latest Supreme Court nomination. Time now for tonight's politics panel. And joining us this evening, Lise Cotel, a professor of women's and gender studies at the University of Alberta, and John Brennan, political analyst and commentator. Good evening to you both. And let's begin with the weekend weather event that dumped more than 100 millimeters of rain on a number of communities in and around the Edmonton region. Overwhelming stormwater systems resulting in flooding and sewer backups. Lise, we heard from Dylan Bressie, president of Alberta Municipalities, off the top. up on challenges faced by many communities. What do you see this significant rain event opening eyes to?
Well, I mean, I have to say, I have to add something to the conversation that the mayor did not mention, and that is climate adaptation. You know, climate change is not just about heat domes and droughts and wildfires. It's about these extreme weather events, which are going to become a lot more common. And we have a huge infrastructure deficit, as he was talking about. But it is also a huge deficit when it comes to climate like climate resilient infrastructure, and that really needs to be taken into account in this conversation, because this is something we're going to have to be dealing with a lot more frequently.
John, as this conversation plays out, there's actually an announcement today of a Minister's Council on Infrastructure Financing, a means of exploring what the government calls innovative approaches to funding without increasing the tax burden on Albertans. How realistic a goal do you see that being?
I think it's a positive development, Michael. Now, anytime you have the provincial government sitting down with Alberta municipalities and the development industry to try to find some creative solutions to funding municipal infrastructure, that's a positive thing. I would forewarn the municipalities, though, that it looks like the provincial government is looking to try to steer away from them providing more money and either looking for it from the development industry, or when they say new funding mechanisms, possibly through P3s. And you know, Michael, we just had an experience with a P3 here in Edmonton with the first part of the Valley LRT line. And after 2 years of operation, the city wasn't happy with the way it was being operated and has taken control of the first segment of the Valley LRT line away from the private operator. So be careful what you wish for, municipalities. You know, you might not like some of these innovative solutions that this panel comes up with.
Lise, to pick up on some of that, how do you see something like this impacting the balance of power equation when it comes to responsibility for funding of municipal infrastructure?
Well, you know, the funding announcement today, which I haven't had time really to review in any great depth, did recognize that the federal government is providing funding for infrastructure. The funding deficit that the mayor was discussing is really extreme. Like, municipalities in this province are responsible for 65% of the infrastructure, but control only 10% of revenue raising mechanisms, property taxes. So either we need to transfer taxation power to the provinces, or we need to be, or sorry, not the provinces, the municipalities, or we need to be paying more provincial tax to properly fund this infrastructure deficit. You know, the question is how many flooded basements does it take before we admit that we can't afford not to build it? And also we have to recognize that when it comes to, you know, the impacts of these weather events, it is not felt equally. It is people without proper insurance, without sump pumps, who are, you know, who are disproportionately paying for the personal costs of these weather events. So, yeah, I think we need to pay more taxes and we need to properly fund our infrastructure.
All right, to municipal matters of another sort now, and significant political bickering over a Calgary City Council noise bylaw decision, pushing the mayor to post this to social media Monday evening.
This wasn't a last-minute change. The Big Tents knew in February that their exemption was under review, and Cowboys was told again in May. Their exemption depended on managing noise, safety, and impacts on nearby residents, and they did not meet that standard.
The updated noise rules mean weekday music for outdoor concert and events, including during Stampede, will have to end by 12:30 a.m. Both the Premier and the federal Conservative leader took to social media challenging the decision, and the mayor, in a post late last night, called the reaction a coordinated smear. campaign. Lee's Calgary City Council actually opened an emergency debate today on the policy and the tit-for-tat spat with the province. What do you make of how this has rapidly morphed into a full-on standoff?
Yeah, well, I mean, municipalities have to be the ones who are trying to balance these competing local interests. So on the one hand, yes, fun is important. Concerts are important. Events like Stampede are certainly important, but so too are residents who are trying to get their kids to sleep, who need to get up. A nurse needs to get up at 6 a.m. for their shift. Like, these are important concerns as well. And 2 a.m. for like a noise cutoff for concerts and festival noise is really late during the week. So I think that this is like, I don't think Calgary needs to reassess this move at all. 12:30 seems like a very generous time. It's a lot more generous than many municipalities. So I mean, this is but the bigger question here, of course, is when municipalities and the provincial government start talking about beer prices and noise bylaws as existential political questions. It's really a sign, I think, that they're trying to distract rather than to solve problems.
John, Jeremy Farkas hasn't backed down much, if any at all, through this political dust-up. How do you see the mayor of Calgary coming out in the mix?
Well, Mayor Farkas is pushing back over provincial overreach, and this is something that Danielle Smith talks about all the time with regards to the federal government. Stay in your lane, focus on your own jurisdiction. Well, municipal noise bylaws is a municipal responsibility, as Mayor Farkas has been pointing out. And Danielle Smith and her chief of staff and the rest of the UCB government have no right to be telling Mayor Farkas and the rest of City Council how they should be administering the municipal noise bylaw and the hours of operation for these party tents. The fact that they're being reduced down to midnight with a slow roll till 12:30, and that they won't be able to serve drinks till 2 o'clock in the morning. That sounds fine to me. It caused a huge disruption for the residents that live in the area last year. And that's what Mayor Farkas and the City Council was responding to. But, as Lee's pointed out, this is a distraction technique that is being used by Danielle Smith and her chief of staff to distract from all the other bad news that is happening, especially in healthcare, and with a negative response Danielle Smith has received to her separation referendum question.
All right, time for us to take a bit of a break. But when we come back, dynamics around the latest Supreme Court nomination. More from our politics panel in a moment. Welcome back. Manitoba's Chief Justice has been nominated to fill a vacancy on the Supreme Court of Canada created by the departure of the former Alberta judge. Glenn Joyal served as Chief Justice of the Court of King's Bench of Manitoba since 2011. And in making the nomination, the Prime Minister says Joyal has demonstrated the integrity, experience, and judgment required of the Supreme Court. The selection process needed to replace Justice Sheila Martin, who retired at the end of May. Prior to her Supreme Court appointment, Martin sat on the Court of King's Bench of Alberta from 2005 to 2016. John, as Joyal, as a pick of the Prime Minister, what do you see his nomination reflecting?
Well, as far as I can tell, reading his biography, Chief Justice Glenn Joyal is eminently qualified to be on the Supreme Court. As you said, Michael, he was the Chief Justice of Manitoba's Superior Court since 2011. He's an experienced jurist, and I'm sure he'll make an excellent justice of the Supreme Court of Canada. It is interesting that he's replacing a judge from Alberta, Sheila Martin, and the Prime Minister chose a candidate from Manitoba. Traditionally in the Supreme Court, Michael, there's 3 justices from Quebec, usually 3 from Ontario, 2 from Western Canada, and 1 from Atlantic Canada. So the fact that the Alberta Justice, Sheila Martin, has been replaced by a Manitoban, Glenn Joyal, makes perfect sense.
Okay, well, Liz, let's pick up on that very point. What is to be made of filling a vacancy left by a justice originally from Alberta with one from Manitoba?
Well, I mean, I think the context matters here, and you have a context in which the premier of our province issued an ultimatum to the federal government over federal judicial appointments, and she threatened to cut off funding for the courts, which the province funds, if the province didn't have more of a say in the appointment of federally appointed King's Bench and appellate judges here in Alberta. And she also made noise about appointments to the Supreme Court and how the bilingualism requirement cut off many qualified applicants from Alberta. So that is the backdrop, but and we have a process that seeks to preserve the independence of the judiciary. We have an independent committee that vets candidates who apply in a public manner. I mean, if you look at Joyal's application, it's available online. Anybody can see it. And the Prime Minister only gets to choose from that vetted list. So, I mean, I think that this is a good play by to the extent that this could be considered to be a political play. It is a good one by the Prime Minister, because what we see here with this appointment, as has already been mentioned, is that it's a conventional competence-based appointment. This person, Joyal, is eminently qualified, 30 years of experience, bilingual, expert in both criminal and constitutional law, which are, the bulk of matters coming to the Supreme Court. So, but I think that the politics around judicial appointments in this province, oddly may have caused, been something in the backdrop of the mind of the Prime Minister when he made this appointment. Let's just avoid reappointing or appointing another judge from Alberta because it could have created some kind of a controversy. I'm not quite sure about that, but there is that dimension to this appointment. But this is a good. He's an institutionalist. Every expert commentator has said that today. Great appointment, eminently qualified jurist.
Okay, so maybe last question to you, John. To what degree do you see this playing into the divisive nature of relations between Alberta and Ottawa? Or does this remain under the radar with the pipeline proposal and deadlines so rapidly approaching?
Well, thankfully, at this point, it seems to be below the radar. We haven't seen any comments from Danielle Smith, and I think that's good. She's already got a referendum question for this October about trying to get Albertans to support her demand for more provincial input into the appointment of Superior Court justices and a Court of Appeal justices. So we'll see how that goes. But, it appears that the most important provincial issue right now for Danielle Smith is the municipal noise bylaw in Calgary and the serving times in the party tents and the Cowboys tents in downtown Calgary. So we'll see if we hear anything from her with regards to this appointment, Michael, but hopefully it just flies below the radar.
All right, we'll have to leave it there for time. We're all out of time. Thank you kindly to you both.
Thanks, Michael.
Take care.
Now, here are a few responses to a recent story posted by CTV News about the federal government reviewing Alberta's private surgery model. Luke starts us off with a question. So we pay taxes for what again? Private health care shouldn't be an option when we are supposed to have universal health care. Hetz writes, it's about time we get private health care in Alberta. I'm sick of the wait times. It's ridiculous. The Sun's Ray Arcade wonders, where is the extra money going and who paid for the equipment that they will be using. If it's public money equipment, there needs to be a complete audit of the medical industry. According to Adam, if it's between this and the current system, I choose this every time. I live in BC, and the long wait times, that is, are so long and the care is so poor that we're better off going to Mexico for our care. And Backer chimes in with simply, buzz off Ottawa. Have your say. Email us anytime at comments@albertaprimetime.com. Coming up tomorrow, from how the business community is weighing the impact of separation to a look at economic implications. We'll do a data dive with the Calgary Chamber of Commerce. That's on Wednesday. Until then, have a great evening, everyone, from all of us at Alberta Primetime. Thank you for watching, and join us again next time.